Welcome to our leads training on engaging the team. So we're going to talk about what your role is and what your involvement can be in improving the engagement across your team as the team lead or lead worker. I'm Kaci Bartholomew. I am the Learning and Organizational Development Specialist here at ODE. So why don't we get started and dive right in? I'm going to start out by talking about the story of engagement, what employee engagement means, what it looks like, why it's important, and then we'll dive in to cover 5 strategies that you can use to contribute to the engagement of individual employees on your teams. So to start out with a few statistics to paint a better picture of employee engagement, the first one here, employee engagement and culture issues are the #1 challenge facing companies today, which is really huge to think about when you compare the challenge of employee engagement to other challenges such as funding, change, and competing priorities. Companies still report that employee engagement and culture issues are #1 compared to all of those other obstacles that they're trying to overcome. So it very much so is relevant and is in the top on the tops of minds of business leaders today. This next one, only 13% of the current workforce is highly engaged. So to simplify it a little bit more, when you think about the fact that only about 1 in 10 people on your team are highly engaged, and that one person could be you. So there is plenty of opportunity to improve in this area. Public employees are the least engaged of all sectors. We're in a difficult environment. You know, we deal with constant change, especially as policies and procedures change that might be out of our control. It's also difficult to see progress sometimes. It's slow moving. And I'm sure we all have other theories based on our own experiences as to why public sector employees might be the least engaged. But this is something to keep thinking about, that just because we're the least engaged right now doesn't mean that we can't be engaged. And so we need to think more about, given our challenges, how do we help employees feel committed and connected to their work? Highly engaged employees are 38% more likely to have above average performance. So this is important because engagement isn't just some fluffy concept. It relates to real outcomes. Employees who are engaged produce results that make a difference and that matter to our organization. And so that's the reason that we talk about engagement, is because it actually does matter to the bottom line and to the impact that we have on Oregonians. 2/3 of employees report feeling overwhelmed. This is important as we think about the relationship between workload and engagement, especially given the legislative session for the next several months. So it's just something to keep in the back of our minds as we explore engagement strategies further. And lastly, disengaged employees cost $500 billion annually in the United States. And this is because employees who are disengaged take more resources to complete the same work, and they leave their jobs more often. So you have the costs associated with training and hiring new employees. So what is employee engagement? What are we actually talking about? Employee engagement relates to that emotional commitment to your job. So a person who's engaged is passionate about their job to the degree that they're willing to put in discretionary effort above and beyond the expectations, the base expectations, in order to drive results. Engaged employees connect their work to the mission, vision, and values. So in order to be engaged, I have to understand how the tasks that I do on a daily basis actually matter towards our overall outcomes. Engaged employees stay in their roles longer. Generally, if I'm committed to my job, I'm not looking for opportunities elsewhere. Engaged employees seek out ways to learn and improve. Because an engaged employee feels so tied to the mission and wanting to make a difference, they're seeking out ways to constantly improve and make progress. Engaged employees build positive relationships with coworkers, and this ends up contributing to the overall work environment and making the work environment more positive because they're building supportive relationships and collaborative relationships. Engaged employees complete higher quality work. So if I'm looking for ways to continuously improve, I care about the outcomes of my work, it's likely that my work is going to have higher quality because I'm going to take that extra time to double check or to have one of the supports in my circle of relationships at work double check that work. And engaged employees put the needs of their client, customer, or stakeholder first. So again, tying back to that connection to the work and that discretionary effort, my work as an engaged employee really becomes about the purpose on the other end in terms of serving that client, customer, or stakeholder. So a common misconception about employee engagement is that it depends on the manager, or engaged employees cannot be, do not exist unless executive leaders do certain things. Most indicators of engagement do not have anything to do with immediate supervisors or organizational leadership. The needs can be met by supervisors and leaders and team leads and lead workers, but it doesn't have to be. It can be met by peers or by people in other offices. And so that's something to think about, is it's not your responsibility being in a leadership role on your team to engage your employees. Each employee is primarily responsible for their own engagement. So it is a choice that has to happen. Your role, being a team lead or lead worker, is to understand and contribute to the conditions that may lead to a person's motivation and commitment as long as they put forth the effort. So if you see our engagement formula here, the right conditions, which can be helped by you, plus employee effort equals employee engagement. So another common misconception is that employee engagement equals employee satisfaction. If someone's happy with their pay, they're happy with their hours, they like who they sit next to, that they must be engaged. But they're not the same thing. They don't lead to the same results. They don't lead to the same high quality work, high retention, and those indicators that we talked about earlier. However, employee satisfaction is a part of engagement. So if someone's not happy in their job, and then they're going to probably be looking elsewhere for work, or they're most definitely not going to have a shot at being engaged. So when we talk about employee satisfaction, it's a measurement of an employee's happiness with their current job and conditions. It doesn't measure the effort that they're willing to put forth in their job. Where engagement is that emotional commitment, and it takes into account discretionary effort. So discretionary effort, that's really the key phrase when you're thinking about how to talk about employee engagement with other people. So we're going to transition now and talk about 5 different methods to help engage employees. They're catchy, so hopefully it's easy to remember. They're the 5 I's of employee engagement. There is a lot of different research out there about employee engagement if you're interested in digging a little bit deeper, and you'll find these same 5 themes throughout much of the research that you will come across. So we're going to talk about informing, inspiring, instructing, involving, and incentivizing employees on our teams in order to contribute to the conditions that may lead to their engagement. So we're going to start out with informing employees. When we're talking about informing, we're talking about providing information, clarifying expectations, and explaining context and decisions. So a couple of different strategies in order to inform employees is to provide information freely to people on your team. So think about sharing information with as many people as possible. In order for people to feel connected to their work, they need to see how it relates to a greater system in context. Sometimes we can have a tendency to give out information on a need-to-know type of a basis, but that's not always helpful for people who then feel excluded and they're missing key components they need to understand in order to look out for the best interests across their team and across the agency. This next strategy is to share expectations around quality, quantity, and efficiency. It's important to discuss expectations often, and as a team lead or lead worker, this falls within the realm of your responsibilities. to share what those expectations are and communicate those with people across your team so that consistent standards are followed. You may think that expectations around quality, timelines, participation, and so on should be obvious, but it's the foundation of employee engagement. If someone doesn't understand what they're expected to do when they show up, and if they don't have a consistent understanding of that with you and with the manager, they don't have a shot at being engaged long-term in their work. Ask if there are gaps in information shared. So if you invite others to ask for clarification rather than expecting people to ask for information they don't know, you'll make people feel more comfortable to come forward to learn more. Offering this up rather than expecting people to ask is assuming that they know what they don't know, right? There's that saying that I don't know what I don't know. And so if we think about that with people across the team, they might not know that information that you have could be helpful. Another thing when you're thinking about providing information across teams is you do want to think about the risks that might be involved. So there are some times where you can't share all information for the sake of confidentiality or safety or the success of some kind of initiative. So there is some balance there that takes a little bit of finesse. But in general, you shouldn't just withhold information out of fear that it might get into the hands of the wrong person. Be responsible about what you share. Be inclusive while looking out for confidentiality and safety. So next we're going to talk about inspiring employees in order to engage them. Inspiring employees references their motivation. So every employee has motivation, right? The degree varies. The reasons a person is motivated vary. And that's where it takes time and it takes establishing a trusting relationship in order to understand what those motivations might be. So strong leaders have the ability to inspire others to act towards a common vision. All employees are motivated, again, it's just that degree that we need to tap into. So talk to team members about their strengths and about their passions. A lot of times a person's motivation lies in their strengths and their passion. And so sometimes the best way to get to know this is just to ask, what makes you most excited to show up to work every day? What are you the most passionate about? And notice the natural tendencies of how employees complete their work, and that will tell you a story about where their strengths and talents might lie. Connect team members with opportunities to do more of what they are best at. Obviously, you can't do this unless you know what their strengths are. Since you are responsible, in some cases, for disseminating work within broad projects across your team, you can connect employees with areas that they're the most excited about and where they produce the best results. And it feels really good for employees to be able to do more of what they're good at. When you think about when you participate in activities that you don't like and you're not good at, it's not a fun experience. You try to get through it as quickly as possible. It's not about producing the best or having an impact. It's just about getting through it. And so that's what we want to think about when you're thinking about those times that you do prioritize and assign tasks within broad projects. Challenge the team to exceed past performance. So some employees are motivated when they're challenged. It's helpful to set small stretch goals that fit within the more broad goals that that individual has set or that the team has set. Sometimes it's that competition that really gets someone going. And then the next one here, care about the development of team members. So I recently heard a quote by Teddy Roosevelt that people don't care how much you know until they know that you care. And that's really true here. People are going to believe you and they're going to trust you and they're going to listen when you seek to motivate them if they know that you care about them on a personal level. So building up that trusting relationship is really critical when we think about inspiring other people to act. So one method to inspire team members, especially through communication, is by starting with why a certain project is important or why the team even exists from a broad level. So many leaders and organizations will spend most of their time talking about what they do. And this could be convincing if the leader also discusses how they do it and then if they finally get to why they do it. But unfortunately, communication usually gets stuck in those outer layers of what and then how. So instead, if we start the discussion by talking about why a task or change is important, it gives someone a reason why they should care about that or why they should be committed to it. A lot of times it helps people feel like they're part of a change or part of an initiative or project if they know what the purpose is and what you're shooting for as an outcome. And then after you've explained, this is why we're going to do it. This is the problem we're trying to solve. This is how we're going to try to approach it. It just goes a little bit deeper into what the actual outcomes and actions might be to get there. The what helps explain the expectations that we talked about. So the what is still important. We still need to get there because employees still need to know what their piece is and what they can do to act on their individual level and what their individual expectations are. It's just ending with what, starting with why, can be more effective than the other way around. This concept is called the Golden Circle. It comes from Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. He also has a TED Talk on the same topic where he gives several examples of communicating starting with why instead of with what. And so if you're interested in weaving that more into your communication style, it might be worth it to check one of those resources out. So we're going to move on to Instruct, the third I of employee engagement. And this area refers to training and development. So providing development opportunities for employees will equip them with the knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary for them to be successful in their roles. So if I know my expectations, if I feel inspired to act, but I still don't have the resources or the tools to get there, there's going to be a block in my ability to feel committed to my work. So strategies to help instruct employees is to provide constructive and reinforcing coaching in the moment. So we talked about this in our last leads training. Hopefully some of you have been able to put some of that into practice even more than you already were beforehand, and hopefully you've seen some great results in employees feeling empowered and able to act in their roles. The next strategy is to recommend employees for learning opportunities. So if you're close to the work of your team, if you notice opportunities that people might be interested in or areas that people on your team want to grow in, you can talk to your manager and help plan out what learning opportunities might be effective for them. So your manager is ultimately responsible for developing a plan for learning and development for each individual employee, but you have a really critical voice in that conversation, sharing the things that you see and that you hear. So along those same lines, since you are so close to the work on your team, if there are missing gaps in skills or knowledge on your team, that's another great way to help connect employees with opportunities where they can learn more about a specific gap. And encourage collaboration that leads to cross-training. So cross-training is kind of a buzzword out there, and it seems like it's this formal process that has to be strategically planned out, but cross-training can happen pretty naturally just through collaboration. So the more that you encourage people across your team to work together on projects, or the more that people have overlapping responsibilities or projects that touch each other, those are great opportunities to cross-train and to talk more about what each person does and how they do it. So again, we talked about needing to know the strengths and aspirations of your team members in order to make great recommendations to your supervisor about what training, development, or learning opportunities might be valuable. You do have a crucial role because, again, you're prioritizing tasks within the broad work already assigned by your manager, and so you do have some ability to match people with those different stretch opportunities. A question that has come up is, how do you know that when you're prioritizing and assigning these tasks to employees that the stretch opportunity isn't putting them out of their classification? So I'm going to talk about that just a little bit, but ultimately you shouldn't be assigning work that's so out of their scope often because the manager is assigning what their overall body of work is. You're just kind of organizing the tasks within that body of work. But work out of classification occurs after 10 consecutive days of completing work that's out of scope with their classification. So if you do have different tasks within your overall project that might be a little bit of a stretch and that match up with an employee's desired area of development, just kind of think to yourself, if that stretch opportunity is so far out of their scope that it disrupts their primary purpose of their position, that it adds to their decision-making authority, or that the amount of time spent isn't significant. So those are the things that lead to work out of classification. In order for work to qualify as a different classification, it has to be at the same primary purpose of that classification. It has to have a different level or type of decision-making authority, and it has to be a significant amount of time. So spending 1 hour in a brainstorming session on a higher level project could be a really great learning opportunity for an employee, but it's not going to place them in work out of classification. And again, if you have any questions about this, or you feel like you're assigning tasks above and beyond what you should be as a lead worker or team lead, check in with your manager and check in with HR prior to assigning those stretch tasks. We definitely don't want people to be discouraged, especially as lead workers, from getting people on your team involved with areas that they want to be involved with just because you fear it might put them out of class and you don't have the budget for that. So it's always a good idea to just have that conversation, bring it up, and check in if you're curious. Sometimes there's a large enough body of work outside of the scope of someone's position that work out of classification might be needed, and it's a very valuable development tool for employees to have to do that work for an extended period of time that gives them the chance to earn money at that classification and get experience at that classification. So it's not a bad option either. So the next I of an employee engagement is involve, which refers to helping employees feel like their opinions count. Employees will be more invested in plans, programs, and conditions that they helped to create. So a couple of strategies here. Making opinions count doesn't necessarily mean that a team member gets their way. It just means they have the opportunity to share their voice before decisions or changes actually occur. Everyone has a different perspective on what they need in order to feel like their opinions count. And so that's something to look out for. There's no one formula there. Some people want to be very involved and have the chance at different phases of a significant change. And other people, they have more of a passive approach to needing to feel like they share their opinions. Maybe just that they have the opportunity to ask questions or send an email inquiring for further information. So it is different for each person. Contribute to a team culture of inclusiveness. Including employees helps ensure that change doesn't feel like it's happening to them. Also, if I feel more included on my team, I'm going to feel more willing and more comfortable sharing my true opinions with the team, which in turn leads to a better end product because you're hearing voices from all different perspectives and experiences. Promote employee wellness. So look out for the well-being of your employees by talking about burnout, talking about their wellness, especially during busy times. Again, everyone has different thresholds here, but if someone's feeling like they're burnt out or that they can't offer anymore, they're certainly not going to feel involved in their work. And so having those conversations, just even checking in with people, can be really helpful and show that you care about them. And then facilitate employee growth. So going back to that training and development piece, it's also a strategy to help involve employees in their own engagement. So when we're talking about employee involvement, we'll go back to one of our earlier thoughts. Keep in mind that the person primarily responsible for their engagement is that employee. So you can start the conversation, you can ask questions, and you can support employees in that endeavor, but ultimately it's up to that employee to do the best that they can towards becoming engaged and committed. A lot of research discusses what leaders at all levels can do, but they miss that most important part, which is the actual employee's effort. So I've got 6 questions here that individuals should be asking themselves. And again, you can facilitate this conversation. More importantly here, try to ask yourself these questions and see if you're doing all that you can in your own engagement. Since engagement is an inside job, it's helpful to explore what you're doing and what you need to be engaged before you start thinking about what you can offer to other people to engage them. So individuals should ask themselves, did I do my best to set clear goals for myself? Did I do my best to make progress towards goal achievement? Did I do my best to be happy? Did I do my best to find meaning? Did I do my best to build positive relationships? And did I do my best to be fully engaged? So if an employee doesn't do their best to set clear goals for themselves, chances are that another person, an outside person, a peer, a leader, or a supervisor isn't going to be able to set those clear goals for them any more effectively than they could for themselves. Again, we all know what we need and what we want out of our workplace and out of our roles and where our aspirations lie. And so it starts with our own exploration and understanding of where to begin. So make yourself approachable and available to team members to help encourage these conversations about engagement. Lastly, we're going to cover incentivizing, which means providing recognition and rewards. It sounds really simple, but recognition reinforces employee behavior and performance, and it has a significant impact on morale. Provide intrinsic reward as opposed to extrinsic rewards. So just because we don't have many resources to provide rewards that cost money doesn't mean that we're limited in this area. Intrinsic rewards often feel more genuine, and they actually improve the perception of satisfaction in completing work. In fact, there have been a few different case studies out there that have demonstrated that employees who are given monetary rewards for completing tasks or monetary incentives above and beyond their regular paycheck, that their satisfaction doing that task actually decreases. And so it's just something to think about, that it doesn't all lie in being able to pay big bonuses or giving out gift cards or other fancy incentives like that. It really is all about being meaningful and being tied to work that is important to that employee. So the next strategy here is to be specific, make it personal, point out specific successes, specific ways that people helped you out. And encourage your team to recognize each other. So this is another one where recognition doesn't only count as recognition when it comes from a manager or from a team lead or lead worker. Encourage people on your team to recognize and show gratitude to each other, especially if they've recently worked on projects together. This can also help deepen relationships, which creates a more inclusive, supportive environment. These relationships can help employees have a support system to rely on, which can reduce the burnout across your team. Connect rewards with motivations. So understanding what motivates someone and rewarding them in that way is going to be really important. Everyone is motivated differently, so don't think that you have to publicly announce a person's contribution if this isn't something that matters to them. Some employees do want that public recognition, though, so it's important to figure out what is meaningful. So I'm going to finish out before we review the main points from today by showing a video about the impact of recognition. It's called the ripple effect of employee recognition. And this video talks about the ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions and how important it is that recognizing people just become a regular part of our days in a genuine way. So I'm going to go ahead and get that video started.
We've all heard the phrase, a drop in the bucket. We usually use it to mean something so small and insignificant that it doesn't matter. And yet, what is a full bucket if not a lot of drops? You can think about your total work experience as a bucket of water that is filled, drop by drop, one experience at a time. When you have positive experiences, you add clear, pure drops. When you have negative experiences, you add dark, cloudy drops. And studies find that it takes about 5 clear drops to counteract one cloudy one and keep your bucket of water clear. We use this analogy when we think about recognition, because every time you interact with someone, you put a drop in that person's bucket. The other person may perceive the drop from your interaction with them as clear or cloudy. And giving effective recognition is one of the best ways to create an experience that results in clear drops. When you recognize the best in others, you not only show your appreciation and admiration, you help build a fabric of trust, cooperation, and engagement.
So that video is great because it really shows that a negative interaction impacts employees a lot. You are probably having more interactions with more people on your team regularly since you are the team lead or lead worker. And so your quick interactions, you may not think about having a drop and having an impact on that person, but they do. And so not only watching out to make sure that it's not a negative interaction, but going out of your way to be positive and be one of those genuine positive interactions, or providing recognition even, can go a long ways towards boosting a person's feelings about their workplace. And then, as we discussed earlier, that ends up impacting their ability to produce results for our agency. And so the other thing to think about this with that 5-to-1 ratio is the 5 drops that are positive aren't just quick, great job, hi, how are you doing? It has to be really, hi, how are you doing? I care to hear your answer. And good job doing this specific task. So they need to be genuine as opposed to check boxes there. So we've gone over quite a few strategies today relating to employee engagement. Hopefully there are some of these strategies that you can apply right away, and others you might need to think a little bit more about how they might fit in with your specific team, given the challenges that the employees across your team face and the culture on your team. So remember that employee engagement refers to employee commitment and that willingness to put forth discretionary effort. So it's not just that I feel engaged and it's a nice feeling. It's I feel engaged and so I'm willing to produce incredible results. Your role is to better understand individuals' needs and to contribute to productive work conditions. So if you think back to that equation, your understanding of how you can help meet someone's needs plus their efforts contributes to engagement. So it doesn't all reside with your manager. It doesn't all reside with you. It very much so is an effort from multiple people. Satisfaction is a part of engagement, but it's not the same as engagement. Just being happy with your job doesn't actually change the way that we produce outcomes. And to engage your employees, share information openly, inspire your team members to act, provide learning opportunities, involve each person, and make an inclusive environment for them to feel involved, and then recognize success in a way that's genuine. Thank you for watching today. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or thoughts on this webinar. Again, I hope that you have some ideas that have been sparked that you can apply to your teams, and I look forward to hearing about your successes. Thanks.